it's very hit and miss. There's a couple of groups that I like and some I've used before. What I did at the start, such a mistake in hindsight, but you learn from it, so it is what it is. I found someone who the content was incredibly cheap, but it was good enough, and I was like, oh man, this is brilliant. I've like threaded the needle here. So I just like pumped some money into it, invested it, and it was sort of like too much content that I could keep up with quality control. And then after like 3 or 4 months of investing some money into it and getting all these words on the site, I started like properly looking through them. And I was like, man, this is rubbish. I was like, this is terrible. So, we've got new writers now. And it was one of those things where, and at the end of the day, like it's obviously the writers didn't do the best job, but at the end of the day, the onus falls on me as the site owner. And that's my quality upkeep that I didn't do. I sort of was trying to pump too much into it too quickly, which has benefits as well in a way. So now I've got at least the content's on there, and if it's starting to do something, that's the next page that I'm going to update to sort of make better, I guess. Because if it's ranking with what's on there now, if I make the content better, it's going to rank more. So yeah, it's a way to at least get some lines in the river and see what catches.
Perfect. Yeah, and I mean that's common too. Like once you have the ability to hire people, and you're like, oh, this is great, we have all this content, and then you'll find the next weakest link. Often that's yourself or myself with trying to keep up. So let's move on to link building, and specifically Haro. And shout out to Dan, who sent some questions in. He was like, Anthony sounds interesting, I want to learn more. And I was like, oh, do you have any specific questions? And then he literally did my job for me. So yeah, we're gonna dive through what Dan sent over just in general. So let's start with like maybe the best link, the juiciest link that you got. You don't have to share exactly what site, but can you just like talk about the best link that you've gotten so far with this Haro approach?
Yeah. So the best link, probably by brand name, would be one that I wrote the response myself for this one, but because it's one that I think of. So I've got a couple of Business Insider links, which are pretty good. I like those. But through the outsourcing, I've got some, DA, I think some in the 50s and one in the 60s, I think. So yeah, you take that and run with it. You kind of expect anything. So as far as like name recognition though, they might mean things to some people, but for me, Business Insider was the biggest name that I looked at it and it was like, oh yeah, I've heard of them. I read that. So yeah, that would be, that's probably the biggest site that I've had so far.
Cool. Yeah, that's pretty amazing to get one of those links. I mean, that's a huge site. So as far as like the outsourcing, can you give us a little bit of a breakdown of like what's going on? And it sounds like you do some of this too. So did you start outsourcing? Did you start doing it yourself? And then,
started doing it myself. Yes, I started doing it myself. And then Haro comes out at the most inconvenient times. If you're in Australia, it could not be less convenient. It's like, midnight, it's like 5 a.m. It's ridiculous. And you've got to get onto it so quickly because if for sometimes they're publishing it like later that day. I've had some responses where, I'll write something and then they'll respond, an hour and a half later and say, it's perfect, we'll use it. And then 2 hours after that, there's like the link to the finished article. And I was like, oh damn, like that's so quick. And sometimes you get the response back like a month and a half later. So sometimes if you're too quick, if you're not quick enough, you'll miss out. So I was doing it and trying to keep on track, but they also kind of get lost in the emails a little bit. So I was like, surely I can find someone to do this. I'll try it out and sort of see how it goes. And I just did it on Upwork, just try to put out feelers out there, put a job out. Found someone who had said she's done it before for people, has experience in it, has used Haro before. So I sent her out some things and I was like, let's sort of see how it goes. We'll try a couple of days. So I made like a little throwaway Gmail account, changed the Haro subscription from my personal email to that email, gave her access to that throwaway Gmail account. So she uses that for the responses. We have a spreadsheet, it kind of goes through it. It took a little bit of time at the start. So I think there was one time, I think it was in the first week or two, and she'd responded to something around like adult toys or something like that. And like I said before, like I'm a teacher in like as a day job, so I'm looking at it and I saw it in the spreadsheet, and I was like, surely not. I looked at the response and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So I was like emailing her and I was like, please don't associate like I have year 9 students that are going to be like Googling their teacher's name. I don't want to show up with like a photo of me next to some like, you know, X-rated toy with just like a smiling photo of me next to it. So if we can like avoid that, I'd be stoked. So after we ironed out a couple of creases like that, it's been going pretty swimmingly. I think we're about 18 weeks in. It's funny that we're doing this interview now, literally probably about a day or two before you contacted me. I just sent out some feedback and we started tweaking a few little things to make it, we've done 18 weeks, we've got a bit of data now. Let's see if we tweak these little things, if it gets better or worse, and we'll keep going. Yeah, some tweaks at the start, but well worth it if you stick through it, I think.
Awesome. And can you give us an idea like how many links that you've gotten over the course, especially with it outsourced?
Yeah, so with it outsourced, I just did some numbers before. I've got, so in 18 weeks, there was 70 responses. And in those 70 responses, I think there's a minimum of 13 approved. So I think what's that, like 1 in 5, 1 in 6, somewhere around there. So that's in 18 weeks. Yeah, so like that's 1 in 5, 1 in 6 are getting accepted. So,
okay. And then you mentioned, you don't want to give out exact prices that she's charging. Is there any way you could quantify like how much you've paid for the
yeah.
13 links?
Okay, cool. So it would be, so I pay by the hour, and it would be around about, I think we're usually on the books for about an hour a day responding to quotes. And it is around that,
Okay.
I think per link, it would be, working it out, like $30 a link, I would say.
Awesome.
Off memory, something around that. So relatively cost effective especially considering what the Haro questions have been about in the past 3 months. It's been very sort of coronavirus and COVID heavy. So I could only imagine, and like I said as well, that's a minimum amount of approved. That's only the people that are responding and saying, yes, we'll use it and here's the link. So it could be more than that as well.